Hey everyone, Rob B here with Rob D, and you're listening to episode 260 of the Property Podcast. And this week is going to be a good one because occasionally we get a bit passionate, occasionally we get a bit ranty, and I promise you today we will do just that.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This week we're talking about property courses. Which property courses should you do? It's a question that we get asked all the time. And unbelievably, we haven't yet answered it in full on the podcast. Well, we're putting that right today. And I think it's fair to say that we've got some pretty strong opinions between us. So we'll be giving those a thorough airing. But before we get onto that, it probably won't have escaped your attention that there's been a bit of weather around recently. There were roads closed, schools closed, offices closed, and unfortunately our meetups were not immune.
No, they weren't. We had multiple meetups called off due to the snow. But well done to those hardy hubbers who went ahead, put some of the meetups on. We still got a few away. And needless to say, Rob, our meetup in Dubai and Singapore and Hong Kong all managed to go ahead. They weren't affected by the snow.
Yeah, they bravely soldiered on. So well done to them, but a special well done to those UK-based meetups. So thank you to our great meetup leaders, and thank you to you if you made it out. If you couldn't make it along, if your plans were thwarted, don't worry. You can already book for our April meetups, by which time it had better bloody not be snowing still. So you can go over to thepropertyhub.net/meetups and book your place for April already.
So our news story of the week is covering On the Market. And On the Market announces 243 new listings agreed in the last 10 days. Now, I probably best start with what is On the Market, because most of you probably don't know. And even those who do know probably don't use it. Yes, On the Market is that rival to Rightmove and Zoopla that you've never heard of. We've mentioned it a few times on the podcast before. And it was set up a while ago by a group of estate agents who wanted to compete with the two big players. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's even commendable that they want to try. But as we said at the time, stood little to no chance with that. And they recently relaxed their rules, because previously they'd only allowed you to list with On the Market if you only listed with one other portal. So you could only be on Rightmove and On the Market, or only be with Zoopla and On the Market. Of course, this wasn't the greatest model, because most people want to list with Rightmove and Zoopla, like we do at Yellow Lettings. Well, they've relaxed that rule, and now they've got 243 new agents, and well done to them. The problem is, you've got to get people on the website using it to make it useful. It's one thing having properties there, it's another thing having people viewing them, and that's kind of the point.
And it's actually even less impressive than that, Rob, because it turns out that the reason that they've suddenly got all these new listings is that they've been offering their service free, whereas previously they've been charging for it. So is it any surprise, really? The reason that they've started offering free listings for a year is that they've recently listed themselves on the stock market. On the Market started out as a mutual. It's now floated, a whole load of controversy around that. And it hasn't exactly made the strongest start to its trading. So it seems like it's doing whatever it can to juice things up and get some good news flow out there to pump up the stock price a bit. It is daft, though, because really, the whole thing about it floating, like, why would anyone invest in a portal that no one's ever heard of? Nobody out in the wider world has heard of it at all. And while it's a laudable idea because Rightmove is so dominant and therefore it's able to charge agents a fortune, the reason that it can charge a fortune is because it gets results. They spend massive amounts of money on advertising. As a result, every buyer, every renter knows that Rightmove is where you go to find property. So On the Market, nice idea, but really seems naive to think that they could compete without spending an absolute fortune on awareness first. And these new listings, I don't see that turning things around, Rob.
No, neither do I. So good luck to them. As you say, nice idea, but we won't be buying any of their stock anytime soon. So the main event, we're warmed up. I feel this is going to be a good one. Rob, do you want to set the scene?
I will, and I could set the scene by reading extracts from my inbox because I get asked all the time, as I'm sure you do, Rob, about which courses I'd recommend. We get asked all the time, and we get asked for a couple of really good reasons. Firstly, people are aware that they need to educate themselves about property, and that's a brilliant thing. People who are getting into property, or maybe have been in it for a little while but want to do more, want to boost their knowledge, and that is fantastic. The other reason is that there's loads of different courses out there. You'll probably find that if you've got any interest in property, somehow in your inbox, you're getting emails about courses non-stop. You might not remember signing up for them, but you get them somehow all the same. And if you ever go on Facebook, if you're a member of any of the groups or anything, you'll see courses advertised left, right and centre. Loads of people are offering courses. Some of them are great, but some of them are really not much better than a scam. And that makes it really hard to know which property courses you should do. Well, in today's episode, we're going to give you a framework to help you make that choice, and we're going to give you some alternatives to courses as well.
So let's start with how to make that choice, how to go about choosing a course. The most important thing you can do is decide on what you want to learn. Don't be sold on what you need to learn. So don't go looking and shopping around for courses to see what takes your fancy if you don't know how you're going to invest. Now, I understand if you're a beginner, you may be thinking, well, I want to go on a course to find out on what I should do. But you don't need to go on a course to achieve that. There are lots of options available to you, like this podcast, which will help you decide on what type of strategy you may want to implement. Paying for people to take you through all different strategies that may not even be a good fit for yourself doesn't sound like a good idea. So rather than get excited by the types of courses and the promises being made of what you'll learn there or what you'll be able to achieve after doing them, get very focused on what you want to do in property and then choose courses, if that's the route you want to go down, that will complement that path.
There are so many courses where people are teaching a particular strategy. Now, that strategy might be taught well by a real expert who's done it, figured it all out, and is experienced in passing that knowledge on in a way that really helps you to take action. Or it might not be. It might just be someone out to make a quick buck. But even if it's the former, even if it's somebody who really knows what they're talking about, that strategy, if you're just getting started, might be completely inappropriate for you. So take lease options as an example. A couple of years ago, lease options courses were absolutely everywhere. It was a trendy topic of the moment. Everyone was teaching it, some well, some not so well. And as a result, a lot of people went along to these because the people teaching the courses were making all these claims about what you could achieve with that strategy. And maybe all those claims were true. But even if they were, if you know nothing about property investment, lease options just shouldn't be the first thing that you learn about property. It's one particular tool. It's a tool that could be very effective in a certain set of circumstances. But if that's the only education that you've exposed yourself to, then you might be trying to use completely the wrong tool for the job. It might be incompatible with what you're trying to achieve. So getting a broader overview would be the place to start. Unfortunately, though, there don't seem to be many or perhaps any courses that do just give you that overview.
And that's why you might want to start with low-cost options, like books, like podcasts, like free courses on the internet, to get an idea of what you want to do. But then even once you've decided, right, I'm going to do HMOs, again, just before you go on to a course, see if there's books that are dedicated to that subject. See if there's courses dedicated to that subject. See if there's videos. See if there's podcasts. There are. We've done many. And build up your knowledge that way. And then once you've built your knowledge up, start to decide, well, actually, yes, I do want to continue and go on a course. Or, no, I've got the confidence to start investing now. You might find that's the case, so you don't have to lump out. It's not to say going on a course is bad, but it just might be bad for you. So make sure you get yourself educated to a certain level before going off on one of these courses.
Yeah, there's a couple of good reasons to do that. Firstly, it'll help you to make better use of your time on the course. You'll be able to ask better questions. You'll be building on existing knowledge, so you'll be able to take what you're being taught and kind of put it into a context that you already have, so it's more likely to stick and you're more likely to be able to do something with it. And you'll also be able to better assess which course is going to be a good fit for you. You'll be able to ask the right questions to figure out if it's the right course for you to go on in the first place, and be better placed to do some digging into the course provider and the claims that they're making.
Yeah, Rob, the first point you mentioned before the show, we'd already done a few notes, and possibly the most important and obvious one, we may be getting too clever with the checks and balances you should do assessing on any course, is using Google.
Yeah, so simple, yet so effective. So there's two levels of check here. The second level is going a bit deeper and finding out exactly what it is you're going to learn and how that fits into what it is that you want to achieve. But the first level is just figuring out if the course provider is trustworthy. What's their reputation? Have people been on this course in the past and said good things about it or said very bad things about it? I get questions all the time saying, I'm thinking about going on such and such a course. Would you recommend it? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to say because I haven't been on any of these courses, so I can't really say. But if you'd Googled it, if you'd spent just 10 seconds searching for the name of the course or the course provider, you wouldn't be asking me this question because you'd have your answer already.
Yeah, that's really important. Double up. Google the name of the person who's conducting the course and the course provider. They may be different, so make sure you do checks on both. And then, once you've done that, get some information. Ask in advance what you'll learn on the day. Now, don't get a sales pitch. Get an itinerary. Get through, okay, what's going to be covered on the day. And make sure that aligns with what you want to learn. Because remember, you've already established on what's important to you. But then, Rob, there's a couple of really important things you should be asking beyond that. The first of which is, will there be any selling on the day? Want to avoid, Rob, if that's the case?
You want the course to be the product in itself. You don't want the course just to be a reason to get you in a room to sell you on other courses or any other kind of product. You want to be paying for the information that you're getting. So by doing the two things that we just talked about, you should be able to do that. So you're going there to learn something specific. You're not there to get general information about property. You're not there to get inspired or motivated. You're there to learn something. So that's where the itinerary comes in. Then by asking if there's going to be any kind of selling, that will give you a good indicator about how in-depth the content is. Is the educational content the point, or is the sales pitch the point? Now, of course, you can't make blanket statements. There may be opportunities to take your learning further. It might be appropriate to mention those at certain points, but if it takes the form of an out-and-out sales pitch and that sales pitch takes up half the day, then chances are it's not somewhere you want to be.
And the breakdown of that itinerary that you've asked for should indicate when that's happening. And if it doesn't, and you've got the itinerary, and then you ask if there's any selling, and they say yes, there is, then alarm bells should be ringing because they haven't listed that down as one of the things they're going to cover. And as we said before, you want to Google the provider of the course and the person holding the course who's going to be taking it that day. So make sure you get details on the experience of the person who's guiding you through that course. Have they been taught by someone else and now passing that on? Or have they got the real experience, the hands-on experience that's so important? If it's all theory, then they may be good at delivering that theory, but when it gets into more diverse questions or strategy, they may be a little bit weaker because of that. And I think, Rob, now's the time for us to talk about the things that people should be really careful of. Because, unfortunately, as we said, there's a lot of courses out there that are just borderline scam. And to be honest, it just pees us off because there's nothing wrong with charging for a course. Absolutely nothing wrong at all. But using courses as basically a sales funnel to extract as much money out of people as humanly possible is borderline disgraceful. And it goes on. It's commonplace. There's huge businesses built off the back of this, and they've been getting away with it for years. So we're hoping today that this podcast at least alerts our community, hubbers out there, so you can help other people too. I want to stress this is not a bash at all courses. There are some fantastic courses out there, but you have to be wary and do the research that we said. But we've given you the research, but we're going to give you a few warnings. And the first one on the list is the free courses or workshops that are advertised in so many papers. Why are they free? Well, because it's not a workshop and a course. It's a sales pitch for 2 hours. But of course, it's pitched as a course. Don't go on them because you know what you're getting. And if you have to go on one, don't fall for all the silly tactics that go on in those sessions.
Yeah, believe it or not, there are not a whole bunch of good Samaritans around who've taken out massive, expensive adverts in the national press so they can spend more money on hiring a venue so they can give you some really good quality information for a couple of hours and then let you go. It's just not going to happen. Of course it's not. They're there to try to sell you on something else. Now, you might say to yourself, well, that's okay. I'll just go along. I'll get the free stuff. Then when it comes to the bit where they try and sell me something, I'll just tune it out, play with my phone a bit, then leave at the end. But you'd be surprised at how effective their sales tactics can be. I've heard from multiple very switched on, very intelligent, very realistic people that they were planning to go along for exactly that purpose, and yet somehow they ended up buying something for thousands and thousands of pounds. And when they talk about it, it almost sounds like they have no idea how it happened. It almost feels like it happened to someone else. They don't understand how this happened to them. The answer is that there are some very specific tactics that have been developed to achieve exactly that.
Yep, you'll get the story, you'll get that emotional pitch of how it changed their lives and how they've gone from being nowhere to being incredibly wealthy in property through these tactics. And you may even get tears. You may get tears because these people are so emotional about what they've achieved. Now, that is lovely. And isn't it fantastic that they have now made so much money from property? So why are they trying to sell you a course in a conference room in Heathrow? You know, if it's gone that well for you, why are you there on a Wednesday night? Wouldn't you rather be with your family and enjoying the wealth that you've created? Instead, you're touring the country in mid-price hotels, trying to sell people courses. I don't know. Seems like the priorities are on there. Rob, if we get it to make it stage, I think that's the path I'm going to be taking anytime soon. Don't know about you.
Well, you can find me at the Maidenhead Travel-In this Wednesday when I'll be telling you about... No, that won't be happening. I will not be doing that. But if you do find yourself at one of these events, then something else to watch out for is scarcity. Scarcity is an incredibly powerful marketing tool. Psychologically, people are very loss averse. They don't like the feeling of missing out. Therefore, you'll often find that something is being offered, but there's only 5 places available. And if you're not quick and you don't rush to the back of the room now, you could miss out. Or if you don't act now, the price is going to go up by £500. And Rob, you were telling me earlier about an example of this in action.
Yeah, I spoke to a friend who I hadn't caught up with for a couple of years, and we got talking about property, as he's super passionate about it, and obviously I was a good person to speak to about that. So we got gabbing away, and he told me about a course he went on. And he said they used 2 really interesting tactics. One, they started with the price. And the price, they went, right, this course is X many thousands of pounds. And he said he was sitting in the course going, wow, that's expensive. But then, miraculously, the price came down. He must have gone on a good day. The price came down, and now it was significantly cheaper. And he said he was sitting there thinking, it's still a bit pricey, but, that doesn't seem like a bad offer. Now, obviously, he's reflected on this since and realised what's happened. But lo and behold, they got told, because, words to this effect, I promise you, this is what he told me, that because they were such a lovely audience, today and today only, he's going to do this special duper price just for you, because he likes your faces. That's not far off what happened. So they started with one price, knocked it down and knocked it down again, and they're just anchoring you to a big price, which that course is probably never, ever, ever sold for. It never got sold for that price, and probably they like every audience and give it at that price. So that's the first tactic they used. The second tactic was then how many they had left. They had only 4 places. And this course was held out somewhere, not in a big population area. And they were holding out 4 places left. And there was a room, and the room had a lot more than 4 people in. What's worse, though, was they got told that tomorrow they're going to London. And those 4 places will definitely go once they go to London. So wait there. Let's use a bit of rationale and common sense here. Those 4 places, if they sold them, which they did, does that mean they cancelled London the next day? No, that London event went ahead. So don't buy the bull. There's loads of it. They use all the tactics. And as Rob said before, really switched on sensible people go to these things and just think, I'll go, I'll learn a bit, and that's it. He said to me, he was nearly taken in. He had to do everything in his willpower to stop himself signing up. Because while this may sound cheesy while you're listening to on the podcast, these people are fine-tuned these sales pitches, because that's what they are really. They're not courses. They fine-tuned these sales pitches to get as many people to sign up as possible. So be careful. But Rob, of course, you can be assured if you find a course that a celebrity is associated to. Or no, have I got that wrong?
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty good rule of thumb that you should be extra cautious if there is some random celebrity associated with it. If you get an endorsement from a well-known footballer or anyone else for that matter, and you sign up as a result, you'll be disappointed to find out that that celebrity won't be there. They probably have absolutely no idea about the content of the course. They've just lent their name to it. And there's certainly an inverse correlation between celebrity mentions and quality of material. And these celebrity endorsed courses, they tend to be just the front end of a fairly elaborate sales funnel. So you'll normally be drawn in by the fact that it's free and the fact that there's a celebrity attached to it to give it some kind of credibility. Then at the end, you'll be invited to come on the next course. And that next course might be for a day, it might be for a weekend, and that might cost a couple £100. And that might not seem like too much of a bad deal.
No, it might not seem like a bad deal. But that's the next stage of the funnel. And the next jump is quite a big jump. They're going to be charging you thousands for their next courses. But don't worry, they've got a trick up their sleeve. Because it's the credit card trick. Now, during these weekends, you'll often be taught how to level up your credit limit on your credit card. Seems like a neat trick, doesn't it? And they'll give you a script that you can call your credit card company, and you go away and you get your credit card limits lifted. And then what happens is they encourage everybody to share their success stories. And people come back and say, oh, I've got my credit limit up by an extra £20,000, £10,000, £30,000, and everyone's applauding. Well done. What's happening in the background is they're taking note of who's got what. Because then they know, when they want to sell their big courses, what type of money everybody has. Now, that's not speculation. I've had that told to me direct. That's the tactic, and that's why they do it. If you've been on one of those courses, you're probably thinking, and that's why they do it. As we say, not far off scams. Maybe it's legal, but it ain't nice, and that's what they do. So be wary. Now, Rob, we've probably terrified people of all property courses for life, but that's not the point here. That's not why we're doing it, because there are good courses out there. There are some great people offering courses. So I think it's important to try and guide people back into, okay, well, what does a good course look like?
Yeah, this is really important because we don't want to give the impression that it's all scams, that you should never go on a course. That's, of course, not the case. There are some brilliant ones around, taught by some very experienced people, and we are fans of paying money to learn things that accelerate your progress. So let's look at some ways of picking through all the ones that you should avoid to find the gems that are in there. The first thing to use as a guide, I think, would be price. So you don't want the price to be too high, but you also don't want the price to be too low. So as a ballpark, I'd say that you should not be paying more than a couple of £1,000s. Now, a couple of £1,000s might sound like a lot, but if it gives you information that genuinely allows you to do the things that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to do, or it allows you to make progress quicker or overcome obstacles that otherwise would have tripped you up, then that's money extremely well spent. You could get a fantastic return on your investment. More than a couple of thousand though, I'd be questioning it. You see courses advertised for £15,000 and more. You're into the realms of the deposit on a property there. And you really do hear about people who spend that kind of money on a course and then don't have any money to invest with because they've spent it all on the course. It sounds mad, but it happens. So that's the top end. But watch out for the low end as well. We've already talked about the dangers of free courses and how it's just a funnel to get you to buy more expensive stuff. I'd say at the low end, you want to be paying more than £100 or so, because below that, there's just no money in it. If they're charging less than that, it can only be to try to get you to go on and buy something else, because there's just no profit in doing it for that price.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. As Rob said, if it's low cost, then there's a good chance of a sell-up. That's a point worth drilling home here. Is a sign of a good course is one that has no sell-up. Doesn't mean it is a good course, but if it's got no sell-up, that's definitely encouraging. But going back to that first point we made, is Google. If there's no bad news on Google, again, doesn't mean it's a good course, but it's certainly going to give you a bit more comfort. So do all those things, and if you really want to take it to another level, ask to speak to somebody who's been on the course recently. Get them to put you in touch with them and have that feedback directly from someone who's been through it. If it's a low-cost course, then you might want to take a punt. If it's a lot of money, you may want to take that extra step. So, some good courses out there, lots of bad ones. Be careful. Be really careful. We wanted to make this podcast because there are so many people who feel ripped off by the experiences they've had. And I know there's many of you out there listening right now who think, God, that's me, that happened to me, or I experienced part of that, and luckily I escaped. Go to the URL this week for this course, and we'll link to a thread in the forum where you can, as long as it's kept legal, you can discuss, your property course experiences. So if you want to go to the URL this week, get all the show notes, go to the forum link that's associated with this episode, then go to the propertyhub.net/what property courses. That's /what property courses. Now, Rob, there are alternatives to courses. Obviously, this podcast is dedicated to that very subject, but there are other ways of accumulating knowledge.
Of course there are. So we've already said that the first thing to do is just get a base level of knowledge. Do enough to figure out whether property is going to be of interest to you and just get a broad overview. And then if you do want to do a course, you can choose one that's appropriate for what it is you're trying to achieve. At that point, going on a good course would be a perfectly great thing to do. But there are other things that you can do instead or as well. One thing to do is go to networking events. At a networking event, you're not going to get structured information. You're not going to go there and learn a particular strategy and be given everything you need to implement it, but you will pick up lots of general knowledge that will come in extremely useful to you. Another thing that you'll get is motivation. And I think motivation is the reason that a lot of people go on courses anyway. They feel a bit lonely, they feel a bit isolated, they perhaps don't believe that it can be done, and they want to be with other people who have done it or are doing it. So they have that belief, and that's really important. But you can get that outside a course as well by going along to networking events. That can also, as you build up your network, lead you towards finding someone who's already done what you want to do and just getting that information from them. I've said this once or twice before on the podcast, but I've been absolutely amazed since getting involved in property at how generous people in property are. There is this reputation, and we've talked about the dark side a bit, so I think it's only fair that we highlight the positive points. There are so many people who are happy to share what they know just because it's something that they're enthusiastic about and they want to pass it on. By getting along to events, by building up your network, you'll meet these people, and it's very possible that they'll pass on what they know, they'll take you around their properties, they'll link you up with other people, just because they're happy to help and it's a subject that they really enjoy. It might take a bit longer. It's not a direct replacement for a course because that structured learning can be really helpful and it can work really well for some people, but you would be astonished if you put in a bit of work, the information you can get without handing over any money at all.
And finally, and probably the most important one, better than any course, any book, and any podcast even, yes, it is investing. Because experience trumps all. By doing it, by getting involved, by becoming an investor, your knowledge will accelerate faster than at any other point. Yes, there's some great resources out there, but investing, that's when the learning really happens. Because you're going to learn from your wins, you're going to learn from your mistakes. But don't worry, as long as you aren't reckless, you'll probably be fine investing. I know sometimes people think, right, I need to just learn this extra thing or learn that one more bit or read that extra book or go on that other course before I start. I'd say if you're a podcast listener and you have been for a while and you're still nervous about starting, then don't be. Because the fact that you've listened to the podcast for a while means that you're probably better prepared than you realise and better prepared than many other people who started investing with a lot less knowledge than you. So don't be afraid. Get investing. Don't risk it all. Don't go high risk or go crazy. Just start. And by starting, you'll learn so much more.
Yeah, this is something that I've found at several points in my property investing career. There's been points when I've done something that I've never done before. So I started in buy-to-let, then I've done a flip, or I've done a development, or I've done some kind of complicated deal structure. And before doing that, I've done a bit of research, I've spoken to some people, and I think I know what it's all about. But then I'll do it and realise I actually don't have a clue. And it's only by going through the experience of doing it and like figuring out each little bit as you go that you really get to understand a topic. So I think that's such an important point to finish on. It's true when you're starting out, but it's true at every other point in your journey as well. Do what you can to learn, but don't forget about the doing. It's by doing that you really learn. And for the learning bit, we like to think that we've got you pretty well covered. As you can probably tell, we've got some pretty strong opinions on this subject, but we've not come out and said that all property courses are bad. We've just said that there are lots of different ways of getting the information you need, and we feel really strongly about making as much of that information available as we can through as many different channels as we can, as cheaply as we possibly can. So the podcast, of course, is the main vehicle by which we do that. But then we've also got a whole load of free courses, not as comprehensive as if you go on an all-day course, obviously. But if you go over to thepropertyhub.net/courses, you'll get introductions to all kinds of different topics. And we're only going to be building on that throughout this year and beyond. We've got the Property Hub Forum, where you can see what other people are doing and follow their stories, ask questions, get that timely information that you need. And we've got the Property Hub meetups, where you can go and get that in-person community and motivation and belief that you can do it and realization that you're not the only one. And if you are struggling and you're finding it difficult, you're not alone and it's worth pushing through. As you can probably tell, it is something that we feel really strongly about. We feel very proud of the community that we've built up over the last few years of doing this. And trust us, this is just the beginning. We've got plenty further to go.
Oh, we have. We are just getting started. We are going to bombard you with free education this year. Can't wait. So before we finish, we've got the resource of the week. But before we get there, let's acknowledge a couple of cool hubbers who've left us reviews on the podcast. First up, we got James, and James says, brilliant podcast. I've listened for over a year now and found each and every information is informative and entertaining. Rob and Rob are clearly passionate about property. Keep up the good work, James. And time for another quick one. Hi, my name's Aaron from Brighton and been meaning to leave a review for some time now. I wanted to say keep up the great content. I've listened to a lot of podcasts based around property, but can quite easily say there's not another podcast out there that covers most of the points that we can all relate to at some point in our property journey. Fantastic work. Keep up all the topics firing out. Look forward to every Thursday's podcast. Thank you, James, and thank you, Aaron. Well, we will reward you with a podcast next Thursday and Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. But before we wrap, let's give you our resource of the week. And Rob, I know you're proud of me this week because I was thrifty. I saved some money. We are meeting this week for a strategy session and we hired a room and we've got a good rate and a good location. The brief was to make it inspiring. So it's out in the sticks, lovely hotel, paid for the room. And then we said, can we have a whiteboard with that? and they wanted to charge they wanted to charge £30 a day for a whiteboard and marker pens. Well, I wasn't having it, was I, Rob?
You weren't. Before you get to the solution, I've got to say, Rob, how proud I am. I've got a bit of a reputation as being careful with money, rightly so, and I know I take it too far on occasion, and I think it's starting to rub off in a helpful way, perhaps. So now I've managed to seize a little bit of the glory for myself. You can tell us what the solution was.
No, rightly so, Rob. Your influence has definitely been a factor to this. So the solution is Magic Whiteboard, and that is our resource of the week because it's really cool, and I can't believe I've not given this one away on the podcast before. But a Magic Whiteboard is like a huge roll of whiteboard sheets, and you rip the sheet off, stick it on the wall. It's the same size as a flip chart. Stick it on the wall, write all over it. You can even rub it off, and then take it off the wall and stick it on another wall, and they last months. But for this strategy session that we're going to hold this week, it's over a couple of days, we'll have them plastered all around the room. So actually, it's even a better solution than hiring a whiteboard, where you just got one flip at a time, flip at a time, flip at a time. We'll be able to post them all around the room. We'll link to it in the show notes. You can get them on Amazon. They're about £20 It's A1 size sheets, and you get 25 of them for that. So I'd say bit of a bargain. And of course, Rob, I'll be bringing my own marker pens too.
Yep, well, I'll be there with my sandwiches I brought from home and my candles just in case they want to charge us for the electricity. You can never be too careful. No, I think that's a really great resource, even if you're not quite as careful as I am. All right, well, that is us for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. I think this is a really important episode. Do go and continue the discussion at thepropertyhub.net/whatpropertycourses and pass this episode on to anyone you know who's talking about getting started in property. Not to scare them, not to put them off anything, but just to make them aware of what's out there, to distinguish the bad from the good, and to know what other sources of information are out there so you can supplement that learning. Because knowledge is so important, so you really should be getting it in every format you can get your hands on.
I think, Rob, we'll sign off in the form of Crime Watch and say, don't have nightmares. Do sleep well. And join us next Tuesday for Ask Rob and Rob. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.